We'll talk about the summer food program as it continues here in Northwest Ohio. But in that same vein, over the last couple of weeks, man, oh man, has Mother Nature sent us for a couple of curveballs as far as not only continued and just what seemed like endless rainstorms, but then the heat. And all of that has a direct effect on our agriculture here in Northwest Ohio. How are these crops doing? Are the workers getting the work in, and are they still here? We are so glad to have with us Francisco Espinoza from the Ohio State University Extension Office here in Lucas County. Welcome to the Roundtable.
Thank you, Jeff.
Let's talk a little bit. I said, is it too dramatic of a statement to say this has been a bad summer, or is it still kind of, we haven't been able to put a definition on it yet?
Yeah, I think you'd have to talk to each individual grower and each individual group of workers to see how they're doing, because we have the kind of weather I think where it might be okay in one area and it's not in another.
Especially the rain. We had,
right.
As we saw some of those fields over the last couple of weeks, some fields were just flooded, others not as much. We're able to recoup some of what was there.
Right. This past week I was out on some of the farms. I went past one field where a grower was assessing the damage. And just by looking at site-wise, it looked like about a third of the field was gone due to the rain damage, the flooding and stuff. So at that point, a grower has to assess what labor does he really need, how much of his crop can he really save. So there is some effect on it. I saw cornfields where the wind and rain had really thrashed them down. But of course, pickles and stuff, cucumbers aren't that high, so I guess maybe it's better to be low. There was also a pepper field, because they've expanded into peppers, jalapenos, banana peppers, and the like. And that field, as far as irrigation, it's probably fortunate to be near a water source, but not when it rains this much. So that field had some flooding going into it. That'll be lost crops there and lost work.
When this happens, are you in turn just bombarded with phone calls from farmers wanting suggestions, farmers needing assistance, things of that nature?
Yeah. Well,
have you noticed that over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, most people who get that are the people who are involved in the direct recruitment and this labor exchange I spoke to you about, that if labor is not needed here, maybe it's needed somewhere else, so you cooperate and correlate things with the growers and with the ODGFS farm program, which has outreach workers that do that. So you try and shift that around. I don't directly get like what I call recruitment things, the labor itself. But I'm aware of it because we have a group that meets monthly, acronym Falcon. I'm chairperson of that.
Okay.
And we share information to try and better referrals for our programs and services, but also to try and do what we can to promote agriculture, to support the growers and the workers in these cases.
Yeah.
And like I said before, a lot of that is being aware of the conditions out there and where labor is needed and shifting it around. So,
and shifting it based on how the crops are doing?
Right. Again, if a crop gets wiped out, well, then you got a labor force that is looking for work.
Yeah.
Well, if you're in contact with statewide and connected to the growers and their situations, have good communication, then you know where workers are needed. So you relay them that way.
Have you been told this summer, because of the what do we have, like 11, 12, 13, 14 straight days, maybe it got up to 16 or 17 straight days of rain, have you been told that some crops were damaged and or destroyed?
Yeah, well, not directly, but that's what I've observed. What we do find is that there's been some damage to where some situations there's a shortage of workers. And like I said, like some of the workers, they may still be coming, you know, and it depends on the communication you have with them.
So the workers come in kind of an ebb and flow kind of a scenario.
The seasons we have here, some people, if you're looking for work as a migrant worker, then you have an early planting of tomatoes. Then you say goodbye to the tomatoes until harvest in the fall. So some people may leave the state. You have hoeing or thinning, as they call it. That's another job that's out there before the harvest. If you're into pickling cucumbers, they actually do some pre-stuff before you harvest, which is like the thinning and hoeing. But they also have a thing called vine training, which, long story short, just means that you have to prepare the plant to produce in a proper fashion.
Yeah.
So that's work that they get into. And then finally the harvest.
And in turn, you and I were speaking about the weather and with the rain, with the heat, the delay of the crops, and that affects where these workers go and if they even come back, period, yes?
Yeah.
And how in turn does that affect Joe Consumer?
Well, I suppose the simplest thing would be supply and demand. If you wipe out a crop, then whatever demand you have, you're going to have a less supply, so the prices go up. I think it's the most simplistic answer. With the price, I just assume it would go up. If you have a negative crop effect, your price is going to go up because the availability is not there.
Yeah. As you guys go through season to season, you said farming has been in your family, picking has been in your family for years. When you look at season to season, and you and I talked about it, having been around here, we've gone through some drought conditions and obviously going through the little heat wave. I said, I think over the years we've gotten a little soft and maybe people, degrees of the heat, and you're like, oh, it's been so hot, but we've had hotter times. We've had worse summers. That's your read as well, yes?
Right. I think with the '88 drought, the concern was that there was so much damage that, as I recall, memory serving right,
Right.
that one of our major focuses was helping people get back to their home states because the profit wasn't here for some of the costs of traveling. And of course, the producers also suffered.
Right.
Because it was a drought for everybody.
Right. You watch very closely the migration of workers as far as coming to this area. You have for many years. What is your feeling as far as Northwest Ohio still being a very viable market for these workers?
I think it is a viable market. I was looking at some NASA statistics. I just chose a random 5-year period, 2007 to 2012, and there's a lot of increase. Well, if there's an increase in the crop production...
Increase in what specifically? Okay.
Well, there's a whole list I had here,
Yeah.
but it's the squash, pumpkins, strawberries, cucumbers, and those require farm labor. So it would seem that if production's there, the labor need is also there. Some of the major changes I've seen over the years is, like I said, I was raised in West Ohio, Henry County, Napoleon, Ohio, Campbell Soup, what was it, tomato capital of the world,
Sure.
I think you referred to it at one time. And I recall picking tomatoes after school, and there'd be a whole bunch of families. My mind says 30 to 40 workers in the field, and you may pick it 3 times. Now you've got mechanical harvesters that can harvest the field in a day, or maybe 2, with maybe anywhere from 6 to 10 workers on the machine. So we have changes like that.
But in turn, what
But
does...
it's still viable.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of crops here. And,
Okay. But as it gets, we see automation happening all over the
Yeah.
place, but you're saying farming is yet another place where automation might be doing away with one worker here, one worker there.
well, if you're requiring fewer workers, I mean, that's, like that's an example of it. Of course, automation is supposed to increase the production too, which is the major idea, profit.
As you look, what are some of the, I guess, timeline figures through the calendar, the rest of the calendar of this summer, where you say we've got to have this kind of weather or that kind of weather in order for this to be a successful crop?
Oddly enough, heat is good for the cucumber pickles, but maybe not that much heat to where it dries out the plants or whatever.
Yeah.
But of course, if you have like pumpkins out in the field, you don't want a whole lot of rain and stuff because then you have rot. You have some diseases that can come with certain types of weather, like I believe it's downy mildew that comes with cold, wet weather for pickles. So I'm still, I can use the word amazed at farmers and their tenacity in their profession for all the things that they have to go through. I even listed some. I remember labor availability, Mother Nature, regulation, right now immigration, and even some of the federal programs, like even with the Affordable Care Act, there's a segment in there that applies to agriculture also. So they're juggling all these things.
Yeah.
But agriculture is still viable in Ohio. We just got to stay in tune with everything, stay on top of it, and collaborate with each other. Whatever portion of it we can fit in, that we can contribute. I refer to it as the agricultural umbrella for stakeholders, people that are interested and involved in agriculture.
Before I let you go, I do have to ask, as far as the immigration bill is concerned, and as far as what you're watching and over what the federal government chooses to do, in general terms here for Northwest Ohio, what does it mean? I mean, how could it affect what we see as far as ag production or just the fact that these migrant workers, their lifestyle as they know it, will it change?
Well, the biggest effect, I think, in the negative sense, would be if you come up with something so restrictive that you lose your labor force. Then this positive production You'd stop the expansion. If you can't find the labor to expand, then you're not going to expand. The reference is usually to 70%, up to 70% of the labor is undocumented. Well, if tomorrow morning you wake up with all that 70% of your labor gone, what are you going to do? So that's that effect. I think some of the people who are looking at immigration solution are looking in a proper focus. If you focus on the economics in terms of Ohio agriculture and viability, that might give you a different view than if you're looking at it as strictly a regulatory legal basis. There's pros and cons to everything, but where's your focus going to be? So you need labor for some of these crops.
Watching it very closely. Francisco Espinoza, thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the Roundtable.
Thank you, John.
Stay right there. We'll have more discussion right after this.